Hello everyone, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Hi, Mike. I can see the screen and I can hear you okay.
Brilliant, that's great. That's one of you at least.
Yeah, I can hear you as well, Mike.
Brilliant.
I'm just thinking if it starts jumping up to the 100 max, then we'll jump off and we'll just watch it on a video. See, customers on first.
We've never had 100 before, it's not that exciting.
Well, it could happen though.
Could be. Yeah. We all went on Paul Chandler's call on Monday afternoon to
Yeah,
see if
we
he was going to
did.
say something about COVID-19 and he made it very clear he wasn't going to say anything at all.
Yeah, I think I left when it dropped to about 59 after he's mentioned that. So.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just give it another minute or so just to let everyone settle in. It could be a bit more interesting today. Last Wednesday I had the house to myself. This Wednesday I've got a full house, so you can play bingo as to what minute at what point some child is going to come wandering in. Right. Okay, I will just mute you all and then we'll get started. Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to the Symology Street Manager Integration Catch-Up. Fourth one of these. The agenda is a bit shorter. We've got just a couple of big issues. We'll have a quick catch-up on what everyone's talking about, coronavirus, then the big news, then we'll see how that impacts the release schedule, talk about a bit integration testing, and then next steps and Q&A. Sorry, just get a bit of background noise. So I'll put everyone on mute so that we don't get background noise of people's children. And let me just do that. There we go. Okay. So coronavirus, what we're all talking about, just to confirm, so where we are, we're still pretty good place. We've got no reported cases or anything. Whereas last time we said we had a skeleton staff in each office just to answer the phones, we've now moved everyone out of the office. Everyone's working from home now. We have our offices effectively closed, unless other than needing to pop in to pick up some paper or anything for emergencies. So you should have been notified about this via your account manager. We've put it on the website, and I think it's going on the managed service portals. Just to confirm that as a result of that, telephone support is suspended at the moment because there's no one in the office to answer the phones. We will, of course, still be providing a full support service for customers. It's just at the moment, it's not. I can't answer the phones straight away. So if you log your calls by email, either at the support email address below or via the support portal, then we will get back to you. And obviously you can access your account managers. They'll be in touch and letting you know how to best to contact them. If you've got any finance and admin queries, again, they don't have any phones, so just email admin@symology.co.uk and you'll better get hold of them. And I'm sure you're pretty much all in the same boat as us on this, and I'm sure we've got the same challenges as us, but it's not been too bad so far. We seem to be getting on okay. So the big news, as you've hopefully all seen via the email from Sally and on the Slack channel, that the ministers have postponed the coming into force of the new regulations. And it's worthwhile just pointing out that it's not really so much Street Manager that's delayed, it's the regulations are delayed, and as a result, therefore, Street Manager being mandatory is now also been delayed. So later on in the document, it makes it clear that it's not mandatory to use Street Manager now until the 1st of July 2020, so it moves back 3 months. They have also pointed out that Street Manager is available for use and can be used now, and pointed out that people can, if they want to, use Street Manager for production purposes from the 1st of April onwards. And I think that's got a few people in the community perhaps into a bit of a tizzy, because it's perhaps got people worried about there being a bit of a free-for-all on going to Street Manager. So that'll be one of the issues we're going to address over the next 5 minutes or so. But just to really confirm things, that aspect of saying that Street Manager is available for production use from the 1st of April is no change at all, really. Street Manager has been available for production use from the 1st of November 2019. And then it was mandatory use by 1st of April 2020. So all that's changed now is that it's now mandatory use by 1st July 2020. But it has been available for production use since the beginning of November, and it still is. But obviously the DFT have taken that opportunity to remind everyone it's still available for production use, but it's not really a change in strategy. I won't keep you in bated breath for too long about our strategy. We'll go into it in more detail in a minute, but just the headline thing is, from our point of view, the transition date moves back 3 months. So we will plan to continue and do a big bang overnight process. Instead of being on the 30th of March, so 31st of March, it will now be on the 30th of June 2020. So the whole process, the whole transition is exactly the same. Our approach to the project is exactly the same. It's just the date moves back 3 months. So they're the headline figures. We'll now look a little bit about some of the details behind that. So why did the DFT mention about going live now? Well, the DFT have been encouraging early adoption of Street Manager for a long time. They've been desperate not to have a big bang and to smooth the curve. It's the DFTs, particularly the cabinet officers' approaches to digital projects, to have a sort of soft, slow start rather than big bang. And they've been doing that since November 2019. It's just that in that time, there's been very few people taken up on that offer. So of the 226 organisations registered for Street Manager, local authorities, contractors and utilities, only 2 so far are using it for production use. And those 2, Bexley and Kensington Chelsea, are just using it to put in some of their Section 58s. They're sort of getting a head start because they're both going to the user interface for Street Manager, and so they're just putting those in already. I'm not quite sure of the legality of those Section 58s and how much they hold if they're in Street Manager only and not served out via Eaton. Perhaps they may have done that via Eaton as well. I don't know. So, but the problem with going live at a sort of as and when you like is there are issues with the piecemeal approach, and these have been going around in the community for a long time. I think we started first asking the DFT about 18 months ago, what happens if, because there are 2 really obvious scenarios when you think about it. What happens if a works promoter goes to Street Manager and the high-rise authority doesn't? Or what happens if the high-rise authority migrates to Street Manager and the works promoter doesn't? And also, what's the legality of all those records you record in Street Manager, the permits, the FPNs, Section 58s, prior to the 1st of July, before the regulations take effect? So we've been raising those questions for 18 months, and I don't think the DFT particularly wanted to answer them and address that issue. But it is an important issue both from a business point of view and from a technical perspective. If you just think it through, the early adoption for someone who is on the Street Manager user interface. So we'll look at non-Symology users, because hopefully all of you Symology users here today will be using the API approach. So if you're a works promoter who goes early, then you'll have to use the Street Manager user interface for some higher authorities, and you'll have to use your WMS work management system or Eaton for other higher authorities. And you will have significantly different business processes between not only those permits, but also in those 2 systems that you have to use side by side for a couple of months. If you're a highway authority, then you'll have to use the Street Manager user interface for some works promoters and Eaton for other works promoters. And you'll have to sort of run those systems in parallel. And again, you'd have significantly different business processes about how you would handle both those works at the same time. And there's, for you as well, no single picture of network activities. So rather than making the transition, say a month of what would have been April, but now is going to be August, of dual running Eaton and Street Manager, if you went early on the 1st of April, you would have 4 months of dual running. From a Symology perspective, so if you're using the API, what would be the implications of you going early? Well, Insight can manage both Eaton and Street Manager in parallel, so you're in a better place there. And you would have a single picture of network activities. But if you went early, well, what is the benefit for you? because your operators would have to dual run for 3 months and have to get used to running Eaton works and Street Manager works in parallel and knowing which promoters and which higher authorities are operating on different schemes. But as well as all the sort of the business issues from the slide or two ago about what happens if two people are not running the same systems, there's also sort of a fairly mundane operational issue for you. There are no OD files in Street Manager, and there is no record in Street Manager at all of who is using Street Manager and who is still on Eaton, other than that spreadsheet that I showed you the cut and paste from earlier. So you would have to take personal responsibility for managing the code of practice versions across perhaps 2,500 work streams and updating them one by one as each organization moves to Street Manager. And I'm not sure there's anyone who will particularly fancy that. So for us, without those sort of things being done by the center, controlled centrally, without that infrastructure in place to control who goes when and for them to notify each other, it's very difficult to go at different times. So it's worth me being clear, a piecemeal approach is not impossible. It's not impossible for different people in the community to go at different times. It could work, but for it to work successfully, I think it would require significant project management. There would be some difficult issues and questions to address, and it would require an organization transition rules document as well, like the works transition, to say this is exactly what happens if people go at different times. As I've just mentioned, you would need the API and UI to be able to record a transition status where you can say we're going on this date at this time, and other systems can pick that up and know to swap you over in the same way that Eaton does with OD files. A spreadsheet is not going to be acceptable for that. And as I say, going back, we've been asking these questions for quite a while now. I don't think the DFT have any particular appetite for addressing that prior to April the 1st. And I suspect there should be even less appetite now, given that the change management the team they've got, I understand, should be finishing on the 31st of March, unless they get some temporary extension, so they'll have less resources to manage this. And so the other main developers are going for the 30th of June as well. They're all pretty much the same as us, that they will take the big bang approach on the 30th of June, because that's the only way we can see working. That's the only way we could see it working for going at the end of March. And so just moving it back 3 months means there's no change really to the transition strategy. The other developers, the same as us, they can allow their organizations to go early. You can go early if you want to. It's just that you'll have to manage which ODs have migrated to Street Manager and which haven't. There is a slight sort of fly in the ointment that we're sort of starting to get word of, that is that HS2 have indicated they're going to be using Street Manager for the 1st of April as their current contract has expired. I've just really heard about that this morning. It's perhaps not a necessarily big issue, because HS2 works are split into in-act limits, which are automatically granted, and then you've just got out-of-act limits that must be granted or refused. I don't know how many they record and what the split is between those, but some of them get granted anyway. But the thing to remember is no organisation can force another onto Street Manager. It's by mutual agreement only. That's been repeated many times by Paul and his team and in the notes. So even if HS2 are going, they can't force you to. It's really, in the absence of any central advice, it's up to you to how to proceed. I don't know how legal an application in Street Manager is on the 2nd of April when the regulations don't come in until effectively the 1st of July. Just as an aside, I think a couple of you may have received HS2 applications, not sure what to do with them. We're not quite sure at the moment either, because we don't have the facilities to test HS2, so we don't have a login for that. If anyone has any contact with HS2 and has got someone who can sort of fire lots of works across for us, then that might help us, and please let me know the contact details on Slack, and we may be able to sort something out there. We can test those out in a bit more detail. So we've had sort of like 5 or 10 minutes just really reinforcing why we're sticking to the big bang but the end of June, so things don't change too much. That's the simplest way we think that avoids the chaos as much as possible and makes it easier for everyone. No need to change, really. So just to confirm, for us, our implementation, we will move the transition date back 3 months, and we will do the big bang overnight on the 30th of June. Of course, that does mean some good news is you don't have to pay for the connection manager between now and the go live, because it's not being used in production use. In the same way, the DFT are not charging you for Street Manager between now and the 1st of July. We'll come back to that point in just one moment. Just worth pointing out, with that 3-month gap for us, work does not stop. Plenty of emails been sent around internally to particularly the development team saying it's business as usual, keep going on. We don't down tools or anything or move on to other projects. We will be using those extra 3 months to work with you to get your configuration correct. It was going to be seat of the pants for 1st of April, and I think for many organisations it wasn't even going to be set up for 1st of April. We've now got a bit more time. We can get that right, definitely for day one. This is getting the API logins, getting the workstream access, getting the contractor access. It's taking a long time to sort out. The DFT are obviously very stretched with resources there as well. We can also complete the missing features. We can fix the bugs. We can do more testing. It's also an opportunity to engage with you and offer you some training, advice, support, consultancy. We've been a bit at arm's length over the last few months because we've just not had the time in the schedule to go around and offer much in the way of training. So it's been handled by a combination of Slack, lots of documents, the seminars last November and December, and these weekly catch-ups. But if you feel you'd like some time from us to go through your business processes or talk to you about Street Manage in more detail, now's the time to think about it. Obviously, that's unlikely to be face-to-face for the next month or two, but with Skype, Zoom, etc., we can do sort of one-to-one style sort of surgery sessions if that's going to be useful. Broadly, from our perspective, and I think from your perspective, it is an opportunity to make the go live more successful. It was seat of the pants for 1st of April. We do not want to make it seat of the pants for 1st July, so we will try and get everything done so we're good to go and we don't have big missing features come 1st July. Just going back to the invoicing, I just said it'll be free between now and the 1st July. Many of you may be thinking, actually, you have had an invoice already sent out to you by us. That's because we were super organized. We didn't want to be generating invoices in April and chasing people for payment when we're all trying to set the thing up. And because for a lot of you, you've got 1st of April renewals and the connection manager charges were included on there. So those have all been set up in our finance system, all went out towards the end of March, or in the process of going out. They've sort of gone past the point of no return. So you may already have your annual renewal invoice, which includes the connection manager, or a standalone invoice that includes the connection manager. When I said to the admin team that we might have to cancel all those and issue out a credit note for every single one of them, their jaw dropped quite a lot on that. And they didn't fancy the idea of having to issue out a credit note and then recalculate all the ASC renewals and send them out again. So our preference would be just to credit the 3 months back off your next invoice, or if they don't have an invoice in the near future, whenever the dust settles. That would be our preference. It also means that then in July, we don't have to set up another round of invoices, and we don't have to start chasing anyone in sort of late July for Street Manager payments. It means it'll go through our system, go through your system, get paid, and it's all done and dusted, and we're not sort of having to threaten to cut anyone off because of just admin issues. For us, the issue is not a cash flow issue. That's not a problem. We're not affected by COVID-19. It's more just a case of there's a lot of customers, a lot of invoices. Whatever's most convenient would be the best thing for us. So just to talk you through a worked example, if you were, say, a customer with a 1st of October renewal, then we would have invoiced you on the 1st of April for 12 months to take you up to April 2021. That was the plan. We'll do a 12-month upfront invoice. And then next October, well, this coming October, you would then pay for the additional 6 months up until October 2021. So you pay a year up front, and then the next year is the balancing payment. So now you've got credit for 3 months unused between April and June. So when we get to that October invoice, you would only have 3 months to pay. So effectively you'd pay 12 months now, and then 3 months in October 2020, and then 12 months in October 2021. That was the plan. If that's fine with you, then I'm happy to just let those invoices go through. They can be paid, they can be all sorted, done and dusted, great. If that's not acceptable to your finance team, if that's going to cause you accounting problems, we're going to have to do some just adjustments afterwards about when to apportion the revenue to, but I'm happier to do that in one sort of lump afterwards. But if that's not acceptable, please let us know. We're hoping that with most of you that will be okay. And if you do need it confirmed in writing, just to confirm anything along these lines, then speak to your account manager. I believe we might be putting a mail shot out along those lines. So feedback to your account manager what approach you'd like to take. From our point of view, if we can take the least admin approach, that would be great. So away from nasty invoices, back to the release schedule. So where were we? Well, we released software at the beginning of March, production release 1, and then 2 straight afterwards. And we used those to upgrade the whole of the managed service. And I think probably largely most of the locally hosted customers have also upgraded onto that, both live and test. So that got everyone ready for Street Manager. So then we were going to sneak in a last minute, all the fixes we could get in for the end of March. There's no need to do that now. That's cancelled. Without needing, if you're not going to be using Street Manager on the 1st of April, you do not need that extra release. So that saves both locally hosted customers and managed service customers from any action there. So where does that leave us then? Well, then really effectively, all of you are on version 3.75, which is a Street Manager enabled release, but Street Manager is effectively turned off. It's in the background, and you just carry on with Eaton business as usual. And that release works like any other release. So if there are any urgent or critical errors, you can have updates for 3.75 independent of the Street Manager work. And of course, any live issues with that release, please contact the support team as you normally would. That's your production environment. Sort of don't even think about, put Street Manager out of your mind when you're thinking about that production environment. In the background, we're then going to branch the version of 3.75, sort of take a separate copy of it, and then we'll carry on the Street Manager development in that separate copy. That's important so that if there are any urgent issues with Eaton type stuff, or even asset management stuff, then those things can be issued out without necessarily suddenly gaining a load of Street Manager updates at the same time. So we will develop Street Manager sort of in a separate version and then merge that and check it back into the main branch later. That's sort of a few technical development terms, but I'm sure you can envisage we're going to do Street Manager in a separate version while we have 3.75 live. So then, rather than having this sort of this very agile sort of every couple of weeks having to produce releases and update customers and give you an update on what they are, we will probably put together a bigger sprint, a sort of series of sprints to cover everything that's left. So we will cover the errors found to date, the remaining features, including the ones we were planning to do post-April. We'll keep up with the future Street Manager sprints, and we can plan for any major Street Manager changes. Now, we haven't really seen anything published about what's going to happen post 1st of April as far as Street Manager. Paul Chandler's given us a list of sort of things off the top of his head which he thinks going to go in. The majority of them are probably user interface based and won't affect us. The biggest one is probably on his list is on an defective apparatus to be able to send in the permit reference that is fixing that defective apparatus. That would be an API change. Otherwise, we're hoping perhaps for a bit more stability in the API. And if we get 3 months with minimal API changes, and especially during June, so in the run up to go live, we can have no API changes, that would be great and will make the project more of a success. So we'll be asking them nicely to get API changes in now get them over and done with whilst it's not live. And hopefully we've had a few issues over the last couple of sprints, both for ourselves. Pitney Bowes had a similar issue as well. Hopefully DFT have taken more account of those and will be taking us more into account for future releases. It's also an opportunity for us to do far more detailed testing and documentation, because we have a more stable release at our own end, and Street Manager itself should be more stable from week to week. Street Manager themselves, they may change their release strategy. I don't know. They do have a big technical bit of debt to work through, which is the ability to have multiple API versions, a V1 and a V2. I know they don't have the infrastructure for that at the moment, so they will be using this 3 months to get that technical change in as well, I'm sure. So then putting that together, those changes, we will probably try and aim to get that out around sort of mid-May onwards. A bit sketchy on times because it will just depend how much comes up in the next few weeks of testing, how long it takes us to do those planned features, and whether Street Manager throw in anything else that is needed between now and the real new go live. So from your own perspective, you can probably start penciling that further integration testing on that newer version would probably have the whole of June for that. You can carry on integration testing now. We'll come back to that in a minute. We're not going to stop you, but the next version would probably be around sort of late May, early June onwards. There are no web services to the StreetWorks direct interface or mobile web services or mobile changes planned. There may be some urgent fixes to 375 production for the production release, but no sort of infrastructure changes there. We may do a select pre-release of sort of a version halfway between that time, or pop it on a few customer sites if you want to test things out and get some feedback on a few areas, or try out some very customer specific things or configuration. So it's not that you'll hear nothing from us, but rather than updating your version every week and no one knowing quite which version people are on and whether the bug has been fixed or not, we can get to a more stable release strategy. We also might need your cooperation in a performance test or stress test. We've got tools in the background we're running with the DFT, which are doing performance tests on both our end and their end to see how much transactions we can push through. We may want to pick a date, perhaps in early June or even earlier in May, where as many of you as possible go on and start recording permits and granting permits, so we can put it through our connection manager and we can get a feel for volumes and just check there are no bottlenecks that we hadn't anticipated in any part of the process, no locks. We'd rather do that before go live. We'd have loved to do it before the April 1st go live, but just ran out of time a bit. So obviously we appreciate you're under pressure currently. You're probably short-staffed. People are working from home and it's all a bit harder. So it actually might go a bit quiet for a bit from our end, while a bit of radio silence, not because we're not doing anything, because we'll just get on with it in the background. And I'm sure you might appreciate the fact that we're not asking or pressuring you for lots of config changes or testing. And if it goes quiet on Slack for a bit, that might be a good thing. But we will be using that time to get on with things on this previous slide. All those plans are contingent really on the current coronavirus situation. We're assuming we're going to be back to normal-ish, or a new normal 1st July. We're assuming the DFT Street Manager don't change their plan. And of course, there's other stuff that might happen. But as of today, that's the way forward. That's the plan. So, testing, it's great if you can do more testing. Appreciate you're very busy and under stress, and it may not be the top thing in your agenda. Obviously, anything you do now is a benefit because it helps us to find things prior to July 1st, but we completely understand it if you want to shelve some of that till perhaps late May and June, when there's the next stable release. It's up to you. Documents have been updated recently. I've even updated the works transition document, changing all the Aprils to Julys, the Mays to August, and the Marches to Junes. So that reflects what we currently believe the works transition to be. There is also, I've updated the Insight production release status. I've mentioned this before, but that document's a useful guide to what's in the current product that people have got on 375. So that's the release date is the 13th of March. So that includes the features we're missing and known bugs that we think you might hit. We haven't put in there a list of every single little thing in the background. So it's quite readable, quite accessible. And the idea is, as we'll see in a minute, you can use that to find out whether there's something missing that we already know about. So these are the main sort of headline things that are not in that production release at the moment. So you can record section 58, so you just can't download them to Works Promoters. The two features relating to non-notifiable works and phases. The one that's caught a lot of us out is the enhancement to create ODs on the fly when we import things from Street Manager. So at the moment, if that OD doesn't exist in the receiving system, so this is mostly affecting HAs, if that OD doesn't exist, then it will reject the works. We're going to put a change in so it creates an OD for you on the fly. That's to take account of the fact that there are no OD batch files going around via Eaton anymore. So if a new promoter comes in or a promoter adds a work stream, it won't be in your HA system straight away. Defective apparatus, when we receive those on a works promoter, we need to create just one notice waiting assessment record for a specified OD of your choice. At the moment, we do it for all ODs. Street Manager changed the way they handle multi-owner streets, so we can actually specify which is part public, part private, which half to put it on, and likewise we can find out which half it's on. They're going to allow us to do subsumed sites. And a bug you might hit that we just spotted recently is if you can now record a duration challenge as part of a grant as a highway authority. When it comes into the works promoter, you're only receiving the grant part of it, not the duration challenge. Now, some of these things, like that last one, may actually get fixed between now and May, because some of the changes we make will be in the central connection manager. So when we update that, that will apply to everyone using our integration, whether they are locally hosted or on the managed service. Those things that require Insight changes, you'll obviously need a new release for. So please keep raising any issues you find with Street Manager integration and your test systems on Slack. But if you can try and familiarize yourself with that release status document. So if you're reporting something that's already reported as being missing or reported as having a bug, then if you don't report, then that saves us time rather than having to repeat the same issue that we already know about. Obviously, if there is some doubt, if it doesn't sound quite like the same issue, or you want to chat over it, then post it on Slack. We'd rather get to the bottom of it in case there are other versions, other flavors of that problem that we don't know about. Or if you think we might have missed something out and you can't see it obviously in that document, then again, please raise it with us. We've now got the time to sort it out. Otherwise, next steps, as per every single one of these webinars, is just quickly reminding you of the things you need to do, which was a real struggle to do in the next 6 days. We have got a bit longer, so the key messages don't stop now. Internally, we've got a bit of a change. We've written some code that will actually extract from the DFT all of the configuration for undertakers, highway authorities and contractors, for the API users, workstream permissions. So we now can see what's set up. Prior to that, we couldn't log in as you, we couldn't see what was set up. So that configuration only works once you've registered that API and we've reset the password and it's enabled it as an API user. But from that point onwards, we can then see if contractors are set up, whether you have workstream permissions. So our account managers will be able to talk through with you much more on a one-to-one basis about any bits that are missing from your configuration. And of course, once we've got it all set up in Sandbox, we then need to get it working in production. So that's it for today's session on the stuff I want to talk to you. There haven't been any questions so far on the chat, so you can either pop a question to chat, otherwise I will unmute you all and I'll probably start hearing lots of baby noises. But if anyone's got any questions, please raise them on chat now. I am getting a lot of feedback, so I've muted everyone, but you can now unmute yourself if you want to shout out a question, or raise it on the chat now, or you can raise it on the Slack afterwards, or have a chat with your account manager. I hope that transition strategy is acceptable to everyone, and that's sort of what you were expecting. I mean, if you thought something different was going to happen, please let us know. If you were wanting to go to Street Manager early for some reason, then please let us know. If you know of any works promoters who are, or anyone really who's going to go to Street Manager 1st of April for similar reasons, perhaps to HS2, then please let us know, because we will have to raise some of the issues with the DFT on your behalf. There is stunning silence, so I don't have any questions at the moment. So I'll wait here for another minute or two in case you think of anything.